Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Power Core Productions and Podcastings. I'm your host, Jerron Harrington, back to hit you with another video. And today, we are going to continue. What if Captain America wasn't Jojo's Bizarre Adventures? Jojo's Bizarre Adventures, The First Avengers, Part 2. As always, if you're a fan of the channel and everything else that we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is Power Core Productions and Podcastings that's to come out now and in the future. As we continue today's series, we reach the climax of the second part of Jojo's Bizarre Adventures, that being Battle Tendencies. How will this affect Captain America as he enters into the next phase of his life? And what will loom for our new heroes on the horizon as a villain from the past looks to make his triumphant return? For all this and more, stay tuned as we now continue. Jojo's Bizarre Adventures, The First Avengers. What if Captain America was in Jojo's Bizarre Adventures? Part 2. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Under Lisa, Joseph, Caesar, Steve, and Bucky would undergo training, learning in the ways of a Haman master. With Caesar leading the way and showing them by example, even though Steve and Bucky were still new to this world of Haman breathing and various forms of combat, their skills in the military would allow them to catch on fast, along with Joseph. The four being prodigies in their own way, they would eventually be able to overcome the trials and continue on learning under the Haman master. In the process, Peggy Carter, along with Howard Stark, would begin to mount an offensive against Hydra in various parts of Europe, while they were also searching for the super Red Aja Stone. Before long, it would be revealed that Lisa was actually the guardian of the Red Aja Stone, and was the one entrusted with keeping it out of the hands of the Pillar Men, noting that it was one of the only few weapons that would be capable of fighting against them, although if it fell into their hands, then it could prove to be the end of humanity. In the meantime, the Red Skull, leading his Hydra forces, was also in search of the stone. Even though they had acquired the Tesseract, the Red Skull looked to achieve ultimate power, not wanting to leave anything up to chance, believing that not only the Allied forces, but also the forces known as the Pillar Men, could also prove to be dangerous as well. Bringing in one of his newest creations, Rudolf von Stroheim, an injured German soldier who had been sent to investigate the Pillar Men in New Mexico, would be called in, having had his body artificially reconstructed. Now half man and half machine and all killer, he would be recruited into the ranks of Hydra, given his own squad of Hydra soldiers, with weapons created by Dr. Armin Zola. They would be sent after the Red Aja Stone as well. In the process of guarding against the stone, they would be intercepted as the four were undergoing their final trial. One of the Pillar Men, AC/DC, would arrive, having found the location with its master Lisa, attempting to have it sent over to his comrades in Wamu, as well as Kars. However, in his attempts of taking the stone away, AC/DC would be defeated in the process, at the hands of both Joseph as well as Steve Rogers, who had grown to take the name of Captain America for himself, representing his country in everything that they stood for. The four warriors, along with Lisa, Peggy, and Howard, as well as a platoon of U.S. soldiers, would chase after the stone, eventually making their way to Switzerland. In the process, they would be intercepted by Stroheim along with Hydra forces, as the two battled and made their way chasing after Wamu and Kars, attempting to get their hands on the Red Aja stone. In the midst of their fighting, Caesar would seize his opportunity, chasing after Wamu, attempting to take him on in one-on-one combat to take the antidote for Joseph. It seemed as though Caesar would have the upper hand on Wamu in the beginning of the fight, although Wamu was not an easy opponent to take down. Unlike in the original timeline, where Caesar was killed, in this scenario, Steve and the others were actually able to catch up to him in time. Unlike before, and unlike warriors such as Caesar and Joseph, who have a bit of honor whenever they fight, for Steve and Bucky, as well as the others involved, they viewed it in a military matter, and that now was not the time to be fighting with honor, especially with the world at stake. With the arrival of Steve Rogers, as well as his backup, Caesar would be saved before being killed in the process, and instead, Wamu would be met with his own demise, being killed when Caesar used one of his Hammond-enhanced bubbles to reflect the light off of Steve Rogers' shield, killing Wamu in the process and taking one of the antidotes that Joseph needed to survive. Once they were able to secure it, the only thing that would be left would be to face off against Kars himself. Unlike before, where Kars was baited into fighting against his enemies, with Wamu fighting with his dignity and with his pride on the line. Instead, Kars would be all alone, as he found himself facing off against one of the Hammond masters, in Lisa, backed up by her four proteges, as well as a squad of U.S. soldiers in the process. The battle would seem to be in the favor of the heroes. That is, until Kars would get a reprieve from an unlikeliest of source. Having had their location revealed, the Red Skull would arrive, along with another battalion of Hydra soldiers, attempting to wipe out all of his enemies off the face of the board in one go, and achieve the Red Aja stone as well as the stone mask for himself. The fighting would enter into a three-way deadlock, Kars with his forces, against Joseph and Steve with the American forces, as well as Red Skull with Hydra forces. The three fighting in a deadlock in an attempt to gain the Red Aja stone, as well as the Tesseract, the two key components in the war. Ultimately, Kars would get his hands on the stone mask and the Red Aja stone, eventually being able to acquire his ultimate form, the peak of pinnacle perfection, decimating the enemies on both sides. Joseph would attempt to use one of his more tactical moves, that being to retreat and get as far away as possible. However, having earned the ire of the Pillarmen, Kars in particular, he would chase after the Joestar, attempting to destroy him once and for all. However, Steve as well as the Red Skull would follow close behind, as the threefold corded group would battle their way off into the oceans themselves. Steve and Joseph would be flying in various planes, while the Red Skull would be chasing behind them in the ultimate weapon created by Hydra to wipe out an entire country, and Kars flying in pursuit not too far away. Joseph would tell Steve to deal with the Red Skull, while he would find a way to take care of Kars. Steve, knowing that this was their only chance of victory, he would turn his plane back around only to be faced by the flying monstrosity that was created by Hydra. His weapons being unable to match that of the ones used by the Red Skull, Steve's plane would seemingly be destroyed. However, he was able to eject himself just in time, clinging on to the side of the vessel using his Haman technique. Being able to make his way through, he would find himself in the control room battling against the Red Skull, as the two of them fought over the Tesseract that powered the flying machine. With Steve Rogers' training with Haman energy, he would prove to be an even greater match to the superior Red Skull than he was before. Being able to knock him out and defeat him in the process, he would take control of the vessel and fly after both Joseph as well as Cars, as the two of them would be continuing their battle in the skies as well. Joseph would try his best to evade the superhumanoid. However, his efforts would almost prove to be in vain, as the two of them would find themselves crashing inside of a volcano that was set to erupt at any time. As Joseph battled against Cars, attempting to make his escape, Joseph would find himself having his left arm cut off in the process. It seemed to be the end for the Joestar. However, before Cars could deliver a finishing blow, Steve would crash the large plane inside of the heart of the volcano, with the Tesseract in tow, blasting Cars seemingly to death. In the midst of the rubble and destruction, both Steve and Joseph would attempt to make their escapes. However, before they could do so, the volcano would ultimately erupt, with Cars having somehow survived even from that explosion. He would attempt to kill both Joseph and Steve once and for all. However, Joseph would instinctively grab hold of the Aja stone, using its energies to prompt the eruption's climax, sending the three rocketing high into space itself, almost on the outer edge. Cars, unable to control himself, would find himself being sent flying out into the vacuum of space, along with the volcanic debris. As he tried to return to Earth, his body would end up freezing in the process, almost turning into stone, perishing into the darkness, drifting away for all eternity. While in the meantime, Steve and Joseph would find themselves hurling back to Earth at high speeds, for what was seemingly going to be the end for the both of them. Despite their best efforts, from both Speedwagon's company as well as that of the US military, when they arrived to where the last transmission had come from both Joseph and Steve, they were unable to find a presence for either of them. Believing that they had perished inside the volcano, a funeral was held for the two, being praised as heroes who had seemingly managed to turn the tide of victory in the war. However, as the day of their funeral had taken place, and everyone had gathered to mourn their deaths, surprisingly enough, a car would pull up to the proceedings, as three individuals would make their way out. One was bandaged and had something circular around his back. The other was dressed in a coat, with a young woman beside him. To everyone's surprise, it was none other than Joseph Joestar himself, along with Steve Rogers, as well as Lisa's assistant, Susie Q, whom of which had actually married Joseph. As everyone was shocked to learn of what had happened, Bucky, Caesar included, Steve would explain that after their fight with Cars, seemingly sending him off into space and crashing Hydra's superweapon into the volcano, the two of them had somehow crashed into the ocean and were picked up by a fisherman and taken back to Venice, where Susie Q had been taking care of the two of them. Susie also explained that in the meantime, both she and Joseph had gotten married. But what really shocked everyone was the fact that they had no knowledge of this. Joseph would then turn back to Susie Q, asking why she hadn't sent the telegram that he had ordered to let them know that the both of them were alive. Unironically enough, Susie had actually forgotten, pissing off her new husband. Steve tried to explain everything and smooth things over. However, Peggy was simply happy for his safety and would end up grabbing him and holding him in a deep hug. In this universe, much would be changed from the original timeline. For one, Steve Rogers would never be frozen in the ice following the events of World War II. As a result, he and Peggy Carter would eventually be able to get married and settle down to have a family of their own, alongside with their new acquired friends in Joseph Joestar, Susie Q, as well as Cesar Zappelli. In the process, because of Steve Rogers being alive and his watchful eye over the creation of S.H.I.E.L.D., villains such as Armin Zola are never recruited, and as such, Hydra is never able to hide within the foundations of S.H.I.E.L.D. and other parts of government. They are forced into hiding, with no choice but to wait until an opportune time can come for them to make their next move. With the super soldier serum within his body, while Steve Rogers would age, he would still be in pretty good peak human condition, even into his early 50s and late 60s. By the times of Part 3, when Joseph Joestar eventually develops a stand, following the revival of Dio, Steve would be introduced to Avdol, a close friend of Joseph's that he would have made along the way following their adventures. Through the process of their close connection to one another, Steve Rogers would inevitably develop a stand of his own. However, this stand would be quite unique for the most part. Steve had stopped being Captain America for some time, but the manifestation, or the spirit of Captain America if you will, would take on the life of its own, and instead, the very essence of Captain America would no longer exist within Steve Rogers, but would instead exist through a stand of Steve Rogers, one that he would go on to call Blue Liberty. Joseph would inform Steve about Dio, about his treacherous past and his dealings with the Joestar family. But even more so, he would tell him of the condition of his daughter, who also was affected as she had manifested a stand of her own. However, due to her body not being strong enough to handle the power of her stand, she would be in critical condition. As such, if they did not find a way to defeat Dio within 50 days, then she too were going to suffer an untimely demise. Knowing that they were going to need all the help that they could get, Steve would make the proper preparations as he prepared for another adventure with his close friend. However, before they could make their move on Dio, first, the three were going to have to make their way to Japan, as there was another matter to attend to. Joseph's grandson, Jotaro, had manifested a stand of his own, and they were going to recruit him, needing all the help that they could get, as their next enemy, Dio Brando, loomed on the horizon. This concludes What If Captain America Was in JoJo's Bizarre Adventures, The First Avengers, Part 2. As always, if you're a fan of today's video and everything else that we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcasting that has to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video as we continue Jujutsu Kaisen Curse of Daishi, based on the Heroes of the Morphin Grid series, Part 4. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings, signing off, and I'll see you next time.